Most people never question the size of the world they actually live in. They wake up every morning, go through their routines, make their plans, worry about their problems, and drift off to sleep believing they have done their best with what they have. They exhaust themselves managing their thoughts, pushing their willpower to its absolute edge, analyzing every decision with the kind of relentless logic that leaves them feeling both busy and somehow deeply hollow. And despite all of that effort, despite all of that grinding and striving, something never quite moves the way they want it to move. Life seems to resist them. Their goals stay just out of reach. Their health plateaus, their finances hover in the same exhausting range year after year. Their relationships repeat the same tired patterns, and they conclude, quietly and painfully, that this is simply who they are, that the ceiling they keep hitting is the ceiling of their nature. But here is what nobody ever told them. The world they have been living in, the one governed by logic, analysis, and sheer willpower, is not the whole world. It is not even close. What you call your mind, what you call your thinking, your reasoning, your daily judgments and decisions, that is nothing more than a small island rising from an ocean of incomprehensible depth. It is the tip of the iceberg. It is a narrow strip of familiar terrain, comfortable and well lit, but bounded by something scientists and consciousness researchers have long recognized. Your conscious mind accounts for roughly 5% of your total mental activity. 5%. That is the instrument you have been trying to move your entire universe with. That is the compass you have been trusting to navigate a continent you have never once set foot on. And beyond that island, beyond the familiar shore of your conscious control, stretches something so vast, so powerful, and so completely loyal that understanding it for the first time will feel less like learning a new idea and more like remembering something you always knew but were never given permission to access. That vast, dark, and magnificent continent is your subconscious mind. It represents 95% of your being, and it has been there the entire time, waiting, executing, and carrying out its instructions with perfect and absolute faithfulness. This is not a philosophy book. This is not a collection of inspirational ideas designed to make you feel temporarily energized before life pulls you back to your old patterns. What you are holding right now is something closer to a manual, a field guide for explorers who are ready to stop surviving on the small island of their 5% and begin, for the very first time, navigating the infinite continent of their 95. You will learn the language of that continent. You will learn why your logical commands have never reached it. You will understand why the territory keeps producing results that seem to contradict everything you consciously want. And you will discover exactly how to change that. Not through more effort, not through more willpower, but through something far more powerful and far more precise. Look at your mind honestly for a moment. That which you call yourself, your logic, your discipline, your capacity for analysis, your daily inner monologue, is the island. It is the tip of the iceberg breaking the surface of the water. It is a strip of known land, bordered by habit, shaped by memory, and limited by what your 5% consciousness has been able to process and accept. You have spent the entirety of your life inhabiting that small island, constructing elaborate strategies to move a universe with your restricted logic, convincing yourself that the magnitude of your willpower is the primary source of your capabilities. Every goal you set, every vision board you assembled, every affirmation you whispered to yourself in the dark, all of it originated on that small island, and most of it was never able to cross the water. But beyond that familiar shore lies something the island has never shown you. Beyond your limited territory of conscious management extends a vast and largely unmapped continent of staggering power. A continent that holds within it not a fraction of your potential, not a portion of your creative capacity, but the totality of it. This is the territory of your subconscious mind. This territory is the origin of every genuine transformation in human experience. It holds the blueprint of perfect physical health, the architecture of unconditional prosperity, and the memory of a universal intelligence so immense that your conscious mind cannot even begin to estimate its scale. It has remained unexplored, untamed, and, most tragically, mismanaged, not because it was ever beyond your reach, but because no one handed you the correct map. For years, you have operated as a disoriented cartographer. You have stood on the shore of your small conscious island and attempted to issue commands to the continent. You declared, "I want to experience real health. I intend to generate more wealth. I am ready for a different life." And the vast territory did not obey. It did not shift. It continued, producing the same landscape you had always lived in. And you concluded that the law of attraction was a myth, that manifestation was wishful thinking, that your circumstances were either fixed by fate or determined by forces beyond your influence. But that conclusion was wrong. Not morally, not spiritually, but technically wrong. The territory was not ignoring you out of indifference or judgment. The subconscious mind does not operate with preferences. It does not decide whether your desires are reasonable or excessive. The territory failed to respond to your commands for one simple and entirely correctable reason. It does not understand your logical language. It does not respond to verbal declarations. It does not obey the grammatical structure of your intentions. And it absolutely does not yield to brute force, no matter how determined or persistent that force might be. The territory, your subconscious mind, has simply been executing the only map it was ever given. Not the map you consciously selected, not the map you carefully drew with your intentions and affirmations. The map it has been faithfully following is older, deeper, and far more embedded than anything your adult conscious mind has ever produced. It is the obsolete and often catastrophic map of your inherited fears, your ancestral limitations, your childhood conditioning, and the collective belief systems of the environment you grew up in. This is why you continue to harvest weeds in the precise places where you have planted seeds of gold. The soil is not broken. The soil is perfect, but the map being used to determine what grows in it was written long before you had any say in the matter. This is the first truth you must absorb completely before anything else in this journey will make sense. Your subconscious is not your adversary. It is the most loyal ally you have ever had. It has been executing its instructions with flawless consistency and absolute dedication. The problem was never the territory. The problem was always the map, and more specifically, the complete absence of anyone ever teaching you how to draw a new one. Your conscious mind, the island, the 5%, is a remarkable instrument for certain purposes. It is extraordinary at analysis. It is brilliant at logic, at sequential reasoning, at evaluating what has already occurred and drawing conclusions from established data. It can plan, it can calculate, it can organize, and it can strategize. But there are things it cannot do. It cannot access the full intelligence of your being. It cannot directly command the processes that govern your health, your energy, your unconscious behavioral patterns, or the invisible network of connections, synchronicities, and opportunities that your subconscious is perpetually weaving on your behalf. And perhaps most critically, it cannot draw the future. It can only analyze the past. This island, noisy, full of agendas, saturated with the anxiety of daily survival, prides itself on its reasoning capacity. It believes in its own authority. And in that arrogance, it has attempted to govern a universe using an instrument too small and too fragile for the task. A poor night of sleep, a sharp criticism, a moment of unexpected bad news, and the island collapses into disorder. It is mortal in its processing. It perceives only linear time, only the sequence of past events and future projections, and it is perpetually at the mercy of anything that threatens that sequence. It is slow, sequential, capable of holding only one conscious thought at a time. And yet, this is the instrument you have been trusting almost exclusively to construct the entire architecture of your life. Beyond the shoreline of your logic, in the deep and largely uncharted expanse of 95% of your being, lies something that operates by entirely different laws. Something that recognizes no limitation of time or space. Something for which the creation of $1 million and the creation of 1,000,000 stars require identical levels of effort, which is to say, none at all. Your subconscious mind does not experience difficulty. It does not have bad days. It does not suffer from fatigue, doubt, or discouragement. It is the original and permanent engine of your life, the true source of everything you have ever observed that seemed to defy ordinary explanation. It is limitless in its access to pattern, to memory, to intelligence. It controls every automatic function that keeps you alive, the rhythm of your heart, the mechanism of your breathing, the precise biochemical cascade that heals a wound without you ever consciously instructing a single cell on what to do. It is connected to something larger than your individual biology, something that consciousness researchers have long described as a field of universal intelligence, a network of awareness that extends beyond the boundaries of any individual mind, and it is totally and unconditionally loyal. It does not judge your requests. It does not debate their merit. It does not pause to consider whether you deserve what you are asking for. It simply executes. It grows whatever seed is planted in it with perfect and impartial faithfulness. The problem, the only problem, the singular source of every gap between what you desire and what you experience, is that most people live their entire lives confined to 5% of their consciousness. They spend their days begging the small island for resources it was never designed to supply, completely unaware that they are the rightful owners of a continent that holds everything they have ever sought. They exhaust themselves on the shore, shouting into the ocean, wondering why the depths never respond. What does this infinite territory actually contain? What are the specific forms of power that reside within your 95%, waiting for you to claim them? The first is the source of genuine and lasting physical health. Your subconscious mind is the original architect of your body. It did not simply assemble your physical form from a single fertilized cell. It continues to maintain, regulate, and repair that form with a precision and sophistication that no conscious mind and no external technology has ever been able to replicate. When you sustain a cut, your conscious mind does not instruct your platelets on how to aggregate, or your fibroblasts on how to rebuild tissue. The intelligence of your subconscious takes complete and immediate charge. That intelligence is not limited. That intelligence is not confused. The blueprint it holds for your body is a blueprint of original perfection. When illness manifests, when chronic pain settles into the body, when energy and vitality drain away year after year, these are not signs that the architect has failed or forgotten its design. They are signs that the cartographer, your conscious mind, has been feeding the architect faulty instructions, fear, guilt, chronic stress, beliefs of unworthiness. These are the corrupted signals that override the perfect blueprint and redirect the territory's extraordinary building capacity toward outcomes that mirror the programming rather than the original design. The second treasure, held within the territory, is the archive of total and complete memory. Your subconscious does not simply remember the biographical details of your current life. It carries the imprinted experience of your ancestors, the accumulated wisdom of generations, and access to a form of universal knowledge that exists beyond the boundaries of personal history. It is an infinite library and the intelligence you have been searching for in books, courses, seminars, and mentors has been residing within 95% of your own being the entire time. The answers you need are not out there waiting to be discovered. They are within, waiting to be accessed through the correct channels. The third is the bridge to universal consciousness. Your subconscious is not merely your personal mind operating in isolation. It is your direct access point to the field of universal awareness, to what mystics and physicists alike have described in their different languages as the all, the source, the unified field. The power flowing through your subconscious is the same animating power that organizes galaxies, that orchestrates ecosystems, that drives the extraordinary self-regulating intelligence of the natural world. By learning to access your subconscious deliberately and skillfully, you gain access to a reservoir of ideas, creativity, and generative energy that has no ceiling and no floor. You, the logical cartographer standing on the shore, exhausted from years of trying to move mountains through conscious effort, alone, have been begging for resources on a small island while remaining entirely unaware that you own the entire continent surrounding it. Your conscious mind was taught to believe in the law of effort, the law of scarcity, the law that says everything worth having must be struggled for. And that belief, that deeply embedded inherited conviction, became one of the primary obstacles standing between you and the full power of your territory. Because the logical mind, designed for physical survival, conditioned by your specific history, functions as a critical guard standing at the boundary between the island and the continent. Its primary role is to evaluate every new idea, every new possibility, every new map by comparing it against the existing archive of what has already been experienced and accepted as true. When an intuitive impulse rises from the territory, an unexpected idea, a creative direction, an instinctive knowing that points towards something your current map has never charted, the guard intercepts it. It says, "This makes no logical sense. This has no precedent in the established record. This contradicts what I know to be true about how the world works for someone with your history." Request denied. When you consciously attempt to draw a new map, a map of genuine abundance, a map of restored vitality, a map of relationships and experiences that exist far beyond what your past has demonstrated is available to you. The guard responds with the same authority and the same refusal. It screams, "False." The evidence in the existing archive contradicts this new input. The file is protected against overwriting. This is the trap of the 5%. The cartographer on the island tries to command the continent, but the methodology being employed, logic, doubt, conscious effort, deliberate force, is the precise frequency that repels the power of the territory. The territory responds to faith, to certainty, to a high and coherent vibrational frequency, and the cartographer approaches it with doubt and anxiety, with the low and chaotic frequency of a mind that believes it must fight for everything it wants. The conflict between the 5% and the 95% is not a battle of strength. The 5% could never overpower the 95 in a direct confrontation. It is a battle of direction, and the disoriented cartographer, issuing contradictory commands and receiving contradictory results, remains locked in a cycle of effort that produces no genuine forward movement. The conscious mind attempts to access the territory using its native language, words, and linear logic. But the territory is a proverbial intelligence. It is the oldest form of awareness that exists within you. It does not comprehend the grammar of your verbal declarations. It does not process your carefully worded intentions or your precisely formulated goals. The territory understands only the language of the land, feeling and image. Feeling is the compass, the vibrational frequency, the energetic signal that the territory recognizes as a genuine command. If your conscious words declare prosperity, but your feeling vibrates at the frequency of scarcity and fear, the territory registers the feeling and disregards the word entirely. Image is the coordinate, the visual blueprint, the precise and sensory map of the reality the territory is being asked to construct. Abstract concepts mean nothing to it. A detailed, emotionally charged, sensory-rich scene means everything. The cartographer who attempts to command the territory through logic and willpower alone is like an explorer standing before an ancient map and shouting mathematical equations at it. The map does not respond. It was never designed to respond to that language. The law of the territory is clear and absolute. Its vast and extraordinary power is mobilized only in response to commands delivered in its native language, the language of imagination and genuine emotion. Why does the territory continue to produce chaos, limitation, and scarcity even when the cartographer is consciously trying with everything they have to draw a different map. Because the territory is loyal, and the map it has been faithfully executing for years is not the map your 5% desires. It is the map your 95% believes to be true, the reality you inhabit today, the patterns that repeat, the ceiling that never seems to rise, the same frustrations appearing in different costumes is the perfect and precise manifestation of an inherited map, a blueprint installed during childhood programming, absorbed from the tribe, the culture, the specific constellation of experiences that shaped your early understanding of what is possible for someone like you. The territory receives two contradictory directives simultaneously. From the conscious mind, I am ready to build an empire of genuine wealth and possibility. A declaration made with words, delivered in a language the territory cannot read, written in ink so faint it barely registers. From the subconscious programming, I am the kind of person who struggles. I have never had enough. I do not deserve the scale of what I am asking for, written in permanent ink, deeply grooved, executed with the full loyalty and power of the 95%. In the face of this conflict, the territory follows the law of inertia. It always executes the most established path, the path worn deepest by years of repetition, reinforced by emotion, and accepted as the truest description of reality. And so, the struggle continues, not because you lack intelligence or effort or genuine desire, but because the territory has been receiving its most powerful instructions from a source that predates your conscious intentions by decades. The solution is not to battle the territory. You cannot overpower it. The solution is to align with it, to stop being a disoriented cartographer issuing commands in an unrecognized language, and begin being a conscious mapmaker who understands the territory's native tongue. The first act of this sovereignty is not the acquisition of anything external. It is the assumption of radical and complete responsibility. It is the recognition that your life, with all of its beauty and all of its limitations, is not an accident inflicted upon you by an indifferent universe. It is the masterpiece of your unconscious programming. This understanding is not a reason for shame. It is the doorway to liberation. Because if your programming created your current landscape, then new programming, delivered correctly in the right language through the right channels, can create an entirely different one. Your task, as someone who has now glimpsed the true architecture of their being, is not to grab the oars and row harder against the current. It is to take up the pen and the compass. It is to learn the language of the land, feeling, and image, and to draw a new map with such clarity, such authority, and such unwavering conviction that the critical guard eventually surrenders, the territory receives a unified command, and your physical life begins, gradually and then suddenly, to reflect the new destiny you have chosen to decree. This is the first and most foundational shift. You have stopped perceiving the territory as an enemy to be subdued. You begin to see it for what it has always been, the most loyal ally you have ever possessed, waiting with infinite patience and extraordinary power for a clear, coherent, and correctly delivered set of instructions. Consider what this means in practical terms. Every human being on this earth carries within them a reservoir of intelligence, creative power, and healing capacity that far exceeds anything they have consciously accessed. The suffering you observe, The chronic illness, the persistent financial strain, the relationships that collapse, the dreams that never fully materialize, is not evidence of human inadequacy. It is evidence of human misdirection. People are not falling short because they are weak. They are falling short because they are using 5% of their available instrument to perform tasks that require 100. The moment this becomes genuinely clear, not just understood intellectually but felt with real conviction, something permanent shifts inside you. Every struggle you endured, every ceiling you encountered, every near miss that left you questioning your own capacity reframes itself entirely, not as evidence of your limitations, but as evidence of a mismatch between your methods and the actual mechanics of creation. You were not failing. You were navigating without a map, in a language you had never been taught, on a continent whose existence no one had confirmed for you. That changes here. The map exists. The language can be learned. The continent is yours. It always has been, and the journey to claim it begins not with more effort, but with deeper understanding. What follows will give you that understanding in precise and applicable form. You will learn not just what the subconscious mind is, but how it receives commands, why it responds the way it does, and exactly what you must do and stop doing to bring the full power of your 95% into lasting alignment with the life you have chosen to build. The most prized instrument your conscious mind possesses is logic, and logic is genuinely extraordinary within a specific and narrow domain. On the small island of your 5%, logic works precisely as designed. It is the science of the known, the measurable, and the already experienced. When you want to understand where your money went last month, logic performs the calculation flawlessly. When you want to identify what went wrong in a previous endeavor and avoid repeating that error, logic analyzes the sequence with admirable precision. When you want to protect yourself from a threat you have encountered before, logic cross-references the existing archive and generates a warning. Within those boundaries, logic is not just useful, it is essential. But the law of the territory is unambiguous on one critical point. Logic is entirely useless for the act of creation. And here is the reason, stated as plainly as possible. Creation happens in the future, and the future, by its very definition, is unknown. Logic cannot map the unknown. Logic can only catalog the known. It is, in the most precise sense, a brilliant historian and a completely broken compass for anyone trying to navigate toward a destination that has never appeared in the existing archive. Think about what this means for every major goal you have ever pursued. The cartographer, your conscious mind, attempts to draw a map of perfect health and immediately consults its logical archive. The archive responds, "You have carried this condition for years. The medical opinion was unfavorable. The statistical likelihood of full recovery is minimal." The cartographer, trusting its logic completely, concludes, "The new map contradicts the evidence. I must abandon the idea of healing." And so the idea dies before it ever reaches the territory. The seed is destroyed by the guard before it ever touches the soil. The same pattern repeats with wealth, with relationships, with every form of meaningful change. Logic is the critical guard that stands at the entrance to the territory. Its function is to prevent any new map from entering that contradicts the existing record. And In that function, it is ruthlessly efficient. Its loyalty is not to your potential, the open, unwritten future, but to your record, the closed, fully documented past. If the vision of abundance you carry contradicts the archive of scarcity you have lived, logic will systematically dismantle that vision before it ever converts into a genuine command to the 95%. And your destiny becomes, by default, nothing more than a faithful repetition of your history. This is the cement wall between the island and the continent, and it is not built from malice. Logic performs this function because it genuinely believes it is protecting you. Its conditioning tells it that the known is safe and the unknown is dangerous. That the past, however painful, is at least familiar. That a new map pointing toward territory the archive has never charted must be a mistake, a delusion, a threat to be neutralized. The guard does its job with complete conviction, and in doing so, it systematically prevents you from ever accessing the full power of what you actually are. For the infinite territory to respond, for the 95% to mobilize its extraordinary resources in the direction of your chosen destiny, it requires something the logical mind is constitutionally incapable of producing. It requires faith, not hope, not optimism, not positive thinking as a cosmetic layer applied over a foundation of doubt. Faith in the specific sense of an absolute, unwavering certainty in a reality that has not yet become visible. The territory needs you to hand it a map that says, "This is the path to a destination that has never existed within my personal experience. Follow it anyway. Execute it fully. The harvest is guaranteed." Faith is the language of the future. Logic is the language of the past. Faith asks you to trust a possibility before the evidence for it exists. Logic demands that you produce evidence from the past before it will acknowledge any possibility at all. As long as the cartographer insists on drawing the map of tomorrow by consulting exclusively the record of yesterday, the continent will remain unexplored. The power residing in 95% of your being will be held in permanent suspension by the skepticism of the 5. And the cause of every persistent struggle, every recurring frustration, every goal that perpetually hovers just beyond reach, all of it traces back to this single fundamental conflict. Now understand something that most people completely misread when they first encounter this idea. The frantic rower, that version of you that rows with maximum effort, that grinds and pushes and refuses to stop, is not rowing out of laziness or lack of commitment. The frantic rower rows because their logic has issued an absolute verdict. The river is hostile. Survival requires constant, exhausting struggle. Any pause, any moment of ease, any willingness to trust the current rather than fight it, is an act of dangerous naivety. The rower is following the only instruction logic has ever given them. And the instruction is wrong. Not because effort is worthless, but because the direction of that effort has been completely misaligned with how the territory actually operates. What is being asked of you here is genuinely radical. You are being invited to do something that every conditioning you have ever received will resist with considerable force. You are being asked to stop using the compass of logic to chart the future, to put down the broken instrument and pick up a different one that your rational mind has been trained to distrust, to minimize, and in some cases, to actively suppress. You are being asked to learn and then to trust the forgotten language of the territory. So if logic and verbal reasoning are insufficient tools for commanding the subconscious, what is the actual language this vast and powerful continent understands? The territory, as we have established, is a pre-verbal intelligence. It existed within you long before you learned your first word. Its language is the language of creation itself, the language of feeling and symbol. Feeling is the compass of the present moment. It is not emotion in the casual, everyday sense of the word. It is vibration. It is the energetic frequency that the territory recognizes as a genuine and binding command. Every feeling you experience is a directive. A feeling of genuine relief is a universal command to the 95%. Resolution has occurred. The struggle is finished. Begin the process of expansion and regeneration. A feeling of sustained fear is an equally powerful command. Imminent threat detected. Halt all long-term building projects. Direct all resources toward immediate survival. The territory does not pause to evaluate whether your feeling is logically justified. It does not check whether the threat is real or imagined. It simply executes the command with perfect loyalty. This is why your words, however beautifully constructed, however earnestly repeated, carry so little weight with the 95% when the feeling underlying them contradicts their content. You can say the words, "I am wealthy," 1,000 times each morning. But if the feeling vibrating beneath those words is the tight, constricted, anxious frequency of someone who does not have enough, the territory hears the feeling and disregards the words entirely. The words are the surface, the feeling is the signal, and the signal is always, in every case, what gets executed. Image is the coordinate. The territory does not process abstract ideas. It does not respond to concepts like success or abundance or health in their general, undefined form. It needs a blueprint, a precise, detailed, sensory-rich, visual map of the specific reality it is being asked to construct. Imagination is the only tool available to the cartographer for drawing in this language of symbol and imagery. And most people have been trained to treat imagination as frivolous, as the domain of children and dreamers, rather than a precision instrument of conscious creation. The disoriented navigator is precisely the person who has been attempting to speak to the territory in a language it has never understood. They have been making requests in words when the territory only responds to emotion and symbol. They have been giving verbal instructions when the territory requires a felt, sensory experience of the destination. And they have been bewildered by the territory's apparent indifference, never realizing that the territory has not been indifferent at all. It has been responding with complete faithfulness to the actual commands it was receiving, not the words, the feelings. Your current life, with every limitation you have struggled against, every pattern you have tried and failed to break, every dream that has remained stubbornly out of reach, is not a random outcome. It is not bad luck. It is not cosmic injustice. It is the precise and accurate manifestation of a disoriented cartographer who has spent years operating with a broken compass. speaking to the territory in a language it does not recognize, and then receiving with genuine bewilderment the perfectly executed results of the only instructions the territory actually understood. Your defining task, the real work of transformation, is not to fight the river. It is to learn the language. It is to gradually quiet the voice of the historian, your logical mind, and learn to listen instead to the voice of your deeper intelligence, the intuition, the felt sense, the inner knowing that has always been attempting to guide you toward the territory's full capacity. It is to stop drawing maps of your past and begin tracing the topography of your chosen future using the only medium the territory accepts, feeling and image delivered with genuine conviction. Now, let us go deeper into the mechanics of this conflict, because understanding it precisely is what allows you to dismantle it. The conscious mind, your 5%, is not merely the island. It is the critical guard of the island, and its function is to protect the existing map from being overwritten by any new information that contradicts it. When you attempt to draw a new map of abundance and health, the guard performs its programmed function. It consults the historical archive, finds the relevant files, failure, scarcity, pain, recurring limitation, and issues its verdict: lie. The new map is false. The overwrite process is denied. This is not a battle of forces. The 5% could never overpower the 95 in a direct confrontation of strength. It is a battle of frequencies. When the cartographer is in active conflict with the territory, when the guard is shouting and the new map is being rejected, the entire system floods with the chemistry of struggle, cortisol, the biochemistry of war and emergency. And this chaotic vibrational state is itself an instruction to the territory. Danger is present. Active threat detected. Halt all long-term construction. Redirect all resources to immediate survival. The territory does not attack you in this moment. It simply stops building. The extraordinary healing energy, the creative momentum, the invisible orchestration of synchronicity and opportunity that the 95% is perpetually capable of generating. All of it goes into standby mode. It is as if an enormous power station shuts itself down as a safety precaution in response to a short circuit somewhere in the system. The result is what most people experience as the paralysis of potential. You feel yourself straining, applying enormous effort, genuinely trying to move forward, while your infinite power sits dormant and inaccessible, waiting for the internal conflict to resolve itself. And the conflict tends not to resolve itself, because the cartographer has developed, over years of conditioning, a deep and self-reinforcing addiction to the struggle. The first layer of this addiction is the illusion of control. The cartographer believes that by planning obsessively, analyzing every variable, and worrying about every possible outcome, it is actively helping, actively doing something useful. Worry, understood correctly, is simply logic's attempt to control the future by imagining all the ways it could go wrong. It is, in its own distorted way, a form of faith, faith in misfortune rather than in possibility. The cartographer prefers the familiar tension of worry to the terrifying openness of trusting the territory. The second layer is the logic of fear. The conscious mind operates only with existing archive data, And for most people, that archive is weighted heavily toward pain, limitation, and scarcity. So the cartographer concludes that a map of struggle is the only rational response. When that bracing produces more scarcity, as it inevitably does, because the territory executes whatever carries the greatest emotional conviction, the cartographer uses the result as proof of its logic. The feedback loop closes and becomes self-perpetuating. The third layer is identity. The cartographer has built its entire sense of self around the struggle. It feels valuable when striving, when it can point to effort as proof of worth. If ease were to arrive without exhausting prerequisite work, it would feel purposeless. Suffering gives the conscious mind a job, and so it perpetuates the very conditions that justify its necessity. The path through this is not confrontation. You cannot defeat the guard by attacking it directly. That only increases the level of conflict and further paralyzes the territory. The path is reassignment. The conscious mind, the logical faculty, must be given a new function, one that serves rather than obstructs the process of creation. In the new protocol, logic becomes the historian and the present moment manager. It reads the past to extract useful lessons. It handles the practical logistics of daily life. But it is explicitly and permanently removed from its old role of mapping the future. It does not get to decide what is possible. It does not get to evaluate the probability of outcomes that have no precedent in the existing archive. That is not its domain. Feeling becomes the instrument of creation. The 5% must set aside its native tools, verbal logic, rational analysis, conscious deliberation, and learn to operate in the territory's native medium. The cold, abstract word must be converted into hot, felt experience. The declared intention must become a lived, embodied, sensory reality, experienced internally before it manifests externally. And trust becomes the operating principle. The cartographer must learn to genuinely rely on the intelligence of the 95% to extend to it the same confidence it currently reserves for its own limited reasoning. Consider this. Your subconscious mind healed every wound you have ever sustained without a single conscious instruction from your 5%. It grew you from a single cell into a fully functioning human being of extraordinary complexity without consulting your rational mind once. It has been managing the thousands of simultaneous biological processes required to keep you alive every second of every day for your entire existence, without any help from the island. If the territory can accomplish all of that autonomously and perfectly, why would it need your logical mind to tell it how to organize the outer circumstances of your life? It does not. It only needs the correct command delivered in the correct language, with the correct frequency of genuine conviction. Your life will not change through more analysis, more planning, or more effort applied in the same direction that has already been producing the same results. It will change through alignment, through the conscious decision to bring your 5% into genuine cooperation with your 95, to stop fighting the territory and begin, for the first time, working with it. This shift in your relationship with your own mind is not a minor adjustment. It is a complete reorganization of how you understand yourself, how you interpret your experience, and how you engage with the act of creation. It is the difference between being a passenger in your own life and being its conscious architect. And it begins not with more doing, but with a fundamental change in understanding. You have now seen the disoriented navigator clearly, the version of yourself that arrived at adulthood with a broken compass, a vocabulary the territory cannot read, and an archive full of evidence that pointed away from everything you most deeply wanted. You have seen how the guard operates, why the conflict perpetuates itself, and what the specific price of that conflict has been in terms of the creative power that has remained locked and inaccessible within you. That recognition is not a reason for grief. It is the foundation of everything that follows. Because once you see the mechanism clearly, you can change it. And changing it is precisely what the rest of this journey is designed to help you do. Let us now turn to the hidden treasure, the three specific and extraordinary forms of power that reside within your 95%, available to every human being who learns how to access them, and yet almost entirely untouched by the vast majority of people who live and die on the small island of their conscious mind without ever claiming what was always rightfully theirs. The first treasure is total control over your physical health. This is not a metaphor. This is not motivational language designed to make you feel temporarily inspired before reality reasserts itself. This is a mechanistic description of how your biology actually operates when the cartographer stops interfering with the architect's work. Your subconscious mind built your body from a single cell. It organized the differentiation of your tissues, the formation of your organs, the intricate, self-regulating machinery of your cardiovascular and immune and endocrine systems, all without a single conscious instruction from your 5%. And it has been maintaining that extraordinarily complex biological structure every second since the moment of your conception. The blueprint it holds is not a blueprint of the body as it currently appears, with its accumulated injuries and conditioned limitations. It is the original blueprint, the map of the body in its state of designed perfection. When illness appears, when pain becomes chronic, when energy diminishes in ways that conventional explanations cannot fully account for. This is not a sign that the architect has abandoned its design. It is a sign that the cartographer has been feeding the architect a corrupted set of instructions. Fear of illness plants a vibrational seed of illness. The belief that your body is fragile or deteriorating or fundamentally compromised is processed by the territory as a directive. Build what is being described. The subconscious, in its perfect and impartial loyalty, delivers the manifestation of whatever map it is consistently being handed. Genuine restoration occurs when the cartographer stops issuing corrupted directives and gives the architect the map of perfection, a clear, felt sensory image of the body as already healed, already strong, already functioning with the ease of the original design. The territory recognizes this map. It has been holding that blueprint the entire time. When the conflicting signal is removed and replaced with a coherent command in the language the territory understands, the architect returns to the original design and begins its work. The second treasure is the invisible orchestration of your external circumstances. Your logical mind operates on the assumption that success and opportunity are produced by effort, strategy, and being in the correct place at the correct time through some combination of planning and luck. The master of the territory understands this as a profound and limiting misreading of how creation actually unfolds. Your subconscious mind, connected as it is to the field of universal intelligence, functions not just as the architect of your internal state, but as the invisible organizer of your external world. It does not merely create your experience from the inside out. It actively rearranges the elements of the outer world to match the map it has been given. This is synchronicity, the convergence of the right person, the right idea, and the right opportunity at precisely the right moment. These convergences are not accidents. They are the territory doing its job. When the cartographer draws a clear, emotionally charged map and delivers it in the language the territory can process, the subconscious begins its orchestration, operating through the invisible field of connection that links all things, arranging the encounters and circumstances that make the intended destination not merely possible, but inevitable. Your sole responsibility is not to execute the plan. It is to deliver the map. The how belongs to the 95% and to the universal intelligence it is connected to. The cartographer who insists on managing every step, who cannot release the need to know exactly how each detail will unfold, is the one who keeps withdrawing the map before the territory can complete its work. Release the how, deliver the map, trust the execution. The third treasure is access to the omniscient archive, the infinite intelligence that resides within the subconscious and that becomes available to you the moment you learn to ask for it correctly. The conscious mind believes that knowledge is acquired through external means, education, reading, research, accumulated over time. And while all of these have genuine value, they represent only the most surface layer of the intelligence actually available to you. The territory holds within it a library of understanding that extends far beyond anything you have consciously encountered. And it will deliver from that library exactly what you need in the exact moment you need it, provided you learn to ask in the right way and wait for the response in the right state of receptivity. The protocol is straightforward. When you face a genuine problem, a creative challenge, a strategic question, a situation your conscious analysis cannot resolve, you bring that question to the threshold of sleep and offer it to the territory, not with urgency or anxiety, with the calm expectancy of someone who knows the archive is real and the answer already exists within it. And when you wake, often in the first quiet moments before the critical guard resumes its post, the answer arrives, not as a logical deduction, but as a sudden felt certainty, a complete idea carrying its own internal conviction. This is the omniscient archive delivering in its own language exactly what was requested. Total control in all three domains becomes available through one unifying shift, from conflict to alignment, from the 5% trying to overpower the 95 to the 5% learning to cooperate with it, from the disoriented cartographer issuing commands in an unrecognized language to the awakened mapmaker speaking fluently in the medium the territory has always been designed to receive. This is the hidden treasure, not something external to be acquired or struggled toward, something internal, always present, always waiting, inaccessible only because no one gave you the correct map. The territory is yours. The language can be learned. Everything that follows will show you exactly how. Your logic believes in the word. It has been trained since childhood to trust the declared intention, the articulated goal, the carefully constructed affirmation as the primary instruments of change. And the word does carry genuine importance. It is the initial design of the map, the first sketch of the destination. But the word standing alone, without what gives it life, is inert. It is a technical blueprint drawn in pencil on dry parchment, complete in its design and entirely powerless in its effect. The territory, in all its vast immensity, does not register the word abundance. It does not process the declaration "I am healthy" or "I am wealthy" as commands that carry any binding authority. What it registers, what it responds to with absolute and immediate precision, is the vibration beneath the word, the frequency, the energy that the word is either carrying or failing to carry. That energy is feeling. Thought is the wire. It is the intention, the form, the structure of the message you are attempting to send. It is cold, precise, and architectural. Feeling is the voltage. It is the energy moving through the wire, the force that transforms the inert design into a living command. A thought without feeling is a wire with no current running through it. The most sophisticated, perfectly worded intention in the world, delivered without genuine emotional charge, arrives at the territory as silence. The territory is not moved by eloquence. It is not impressed by the logic of your aspirations. It is mobilized only by one thing: genuine, energetic frequency. And that frequency is produced only by felt experience, by the actual, embodied, biochemical state of living the emotion of your desired reality before that reality has physically arrived. This is where the tragedy of incoherence reveals itself in its most practical and painful form. The cartographer, your 5%, says with words, "I intend to build genuine wealth. I choose abundance. I am ready for prosperity." But the 95%, the emotional body, the vibrational system that the territory is actually listening to, is broadcasting something entirely different. I feel the constriction of never having enough. I feel the familiar anxiety of financial fear. I feel, beneath every conscious intention, the deep and ancient programming that says someone like me does not get to have what I am asking for. The territory does not hear the word wealthy. It hears the frequency of lack. And in its absolute and impartial loyalty, it executes the strongest signal, not the most recent one, not the loudest one from the conscious surface, but the deepest one, the one vibrating with the most emotional conviction. And that signal says, build more of what already exists. Your life does not change because of a deficit of desire. Every person who has ever struggled with persistent limitation has desired something different with genuine intensity. Your life changes or fails to change based on the coherence between what you declare consciously and what you feel energetically. And as long as these two signals are broadcasting in opposite directions, the territory receives a contradictory command and, following the law of inertia, defaults to executing the map it already knows. Feelings are not merely the emotional weather of your inner life. They are biological commands and vibratory directives specific biochemical states that translate directly into instructions the territory reads and obeys. There are two primary categories of feeling as they relate to the territory's response. The first is the command of contraction. When you experience fear, resentment, chronic stress, or the sustained vibration of lack and anxiety, you are issuing a contraction command to the 95%. The instruction is shut down the system, stop the flow, prepare for threat. Halt all long-term construction projects and redirect every available resource toward immediate survival. The territory obeys without debate. It mobilizes cortisol, the chemistry of emergency. It creates muscular tension, constriction in the chest, a narrowing of perceptual focus to the immediate threat. And in its faithful execution of this command, it makes the manifestation of anything beyond immediate survival biochemically and energetically impossible. The second is the command of expansion. When you experience genuine love, deep gratitude, real relief, or the sustained sense of wholeness and sufficiency, even in the absence of the external conditions that would logically justify these feelings, you are issuing an expansion command. The instruction is open the system. The flow is safe. Initiate regeneration. Begin the construction of the new map. The territory obeys with the same precision and faithfulness it brings to every command. It releases oxytocin and serotonin, the chemistry of safety and connection. It relaxes the musculature, expands perceptual range, and mobilizes the extraordinary creative and orchestrating intelligence of the 95% toward the work of building what has been decreed. Feeling is the only genuine medium through which a sensible command can reach the vast territory of your being. The cartographer must learn to stop issuing orders in the currency of words and begin issuing them in the currency of vibration, in the genuine, embodied, biochemical experience of the emotional state that corresponds to the desired reality already fulfilled. The first practical task of the awakened cartographer is therefore not to change their external circumstances. It is to locate and deliberately generate the opposite feeling to whatever contracted state currently dominates their system. If your present reality is characterized by the frequency of illness, the chemistry of fear and bracing, then your primary creative task is to identify and cultivate the chemistry of health, relief, gratitude, ease, the felt sense of a body that supports you unconditionally. It does not matter, in the mechanics of this process, that your external reality currently contradicts the feeling you are working to generate. What matters is the feeling itself. The law of correspondence is absolute and impartial. Change the inside, the vibrational state, and the outside, the manifested reality, must eventually follow. It has no other option. The territory is loyal. The conscious mind operates by reflex as a thermometer. It reads the temperature of the room and reports it faithfully. The bill arrives and the thermometer reads panic. The relationship produces conflict and the thermometer reads fear. The body displays symptoms and the thermometer reads dread. This reactive emotional response is what we might call useless ink. It is a simple transcript of existing conditions, a report of the past presenting itself as a description of permanent reality. And the territory, that vast system, requiring sustained and consistent input to mobilize its resources, cannot be adequately commanded by a 1-second reactive spike that immediately reverts to baseline. It needs something with duration, with persistence, with the quality of a climate, rather than a weather event. This is the difference between emotion and sustained feeling. Emotion is a wave. It rises sharply in response to a stimulus and subsides equally sharply once the stimulus passes. Sustained feeling is the tide. It moves slowly, covers more ground, and cannot be dismissed or deflected by a single contrary wind. The territory operates under the law of rhythm. It cannot build on the unstable ground of reactive emotional spikes. It needs the constancy of a tide to recognize a genuine command and fully mobilize its resources in response. The cartographer's task is therefore to stop being a thermometer and become a thermostat, to stop reflecting the temperature of existing conditions and dedicate themselves instead to setting the temperature, to choosing and sustaining a specific emotional climate regardless of what the external landscape is currently reporting. This is not denial of reality. It is the recognition of which reality you choose to give your creative authority to, the past, as reflected in your current circumstances, or the future, as defined by the map you have chosen to draw. Sustained feeling creates what can be described as vibrational coherence in your system. When a single consistent frequency dominates the emotional body over time, it eliminates the noise of internal conflict, the static generated by contradictory signals from the 5% and the 95, and generates instead a clear, focused, laser-precise signal of intention. This coherent signal is the only frequency that the territory can receive as a legitimate and binding command. It is the difference between a radio station broadcasting on a stable frequency and one flickering between channels. The first transmits clearly, the second transmits nothing intelligible. The highest form of sustained feeling, the most powerful syntax available to the cartographer who wishes to command the territory with maximum authority, is assumption. Assumption is not affirmation. It is not the repetition of a statement about a desired future. It is the act of inhabiting the new map now. It is the decision to move your consciousness entirely into the destination and to begin experiencing from the inside the full sensory and emotional reality of a life in which the desired outcome has already been achieved. Most people approach manifestation with a critical temporal error embedded in their language and their feeling. They say, I will be prosperous. I will recover my health. I will find the relationship I am looking for. This grammatical structure, however sincerely felt, contains within it an affirmation of present absence. The territory hears the word will and registers not yet. The map is for the future. Maintain the current reality for now. The command is deferred. The construction is postponed. Assumption reverses this grammar entirely. It employs the creative verb I am, declared and felt in the present tense, anchored in the now. The cartographer does not say, I will be healthy. They generate the genuine felt experience of being healthy, the specific biochemistry of relief, ease, and gratitude that accompanies the reality of a body functioning in its designed perfection. And they allow that feeling to permeate their system as the present tense truth, not as a future possibility to be hoped for, as a current reality to be inhabited and embodied. How is this assumption achieved in practical terms? Through the body. The cartographer must use their conscious mind not to argue with the territory, but to generate the specific chemistry of the destination. If the destination is financial relief, you do not visualize money abstractly. You generate the specific felt experience of relief itself. The relaxation in the chest, the loosening of the jaw, the particular quality of ease that can only occur when a long-standing pressure has genuinely resolved. You flood your system with that biochemistry before the external cause of relief has arrived, and the territory which reads feeling as command and does not distinguish between the feeling generated by an external event and the feeling generated by internal creative authority, receives the relief and concludes, the resolution order has been executed. The map must be updated to reflect this new reality. The territory is in its own way cautious. It has been receiving mixed signals from the cartographer for years, words pointing in one direction, feelings pointing in another, and it has learned to look past the words entirely for the signal that carries genuine authority. The signal it accepts as irrefutable proof that a new map is genuine and binding is the feeling of relief. Relief is a feeling that can only authentically occur when a struggle has genuinely ended. It is the specific biochemical signature of resolution, of a weight that has been lifted and a pressure that has been released. If the cartographer can generate the genuine feeling of relief, not a performance of it, not an intellectual approximation of it, but the actual embodied experience of it before the external conditions that would logically justify it have materialized. The territory reads this as conclusive evidence. The struggle is over. The new reality has arrived. The old map is no longer valid. Begin the work of aligning the external landscape with the new internal truth. This is the key that unlocks the vault, not the perfectly worded intention, not the elaborate visualization performed with gritted teeth concentration. The genuine, embodied feeling of relief, felt before its logical cause exists, is the one signal that the territory accepts without reservation as the command to fully mobilize its 95% of extraordinary power toward the creation of the new reality you have decreed. Now we arrive at one of the most carefully guarded secrets in the territory's mechanics, a secret that the most ancient wisdom traditions encoded in different languages, but always pointed toward the same essential truth. For your new map to be received and accepted by the territory with maximum depth and minimum resistance, it must be delivered at a specific moment, a window of extraordinary receptivity that appears twice in every 24 hours and that most people pass through completely unconsciously, receiving none of its extraordinary creative potential. Most people who first encounter these principles make a timing error. They attempt to draw their new map in the middle of the day, with the critical guard fully active, the noise of the external world pouring in from every direction, and the accumulated stress of daily life vibrating through their system as a persistent, low-frequency interference. This is like trying to inscribe a detailed and permanent map on the deck of a ship in the middle of a hurricane. The conditions are entirely wrong. The ink cannot penetrate. Every stroke of genuine intention is immediately overwhelmed and dispersed by the surrounding chaos. The territory requires, for maximum receptivity, a very specific condition: the temporary suspension of the critical guard. The guard, that analytical, evaluating, archive, consulting function of the conscious mind is formidably effective at its primary job, which is the rejection of any new information that contradicts the existing map. As long as the guard is awake and at its post, any attempt to imprint a new map will be intercepted, evaluated against the historical record, and denied entry. This is why years of consciously repeated affirmations performed during the full wakefulness of the day often produce little lasting change in the subconscious programming. The guard is on duty. The new map never reaches the territory. The secret is this: you cannot fight the guard. Every attempt to overpower it through force or persistence only strengthens its resistance. The only effective strategy is to wait for the moment when the guard naturally, inevitably, and completely lowers its defenses, and that moment occurs twice daily at the precise boundary between waking and sleep. This portal, the drowsy state, the threshold of consciousness, is the moment when your brain shifts its frequency from the active beta waves of alert wakefulness through the relaxed alpha state and descends into theta. The theta state is the portal of creation. It is the hypnagogic moment experienced just before sleep fully arrives, and the hypnopompic moment experienced in the first minutes of waking before full consciousness is restored. In this state, the veil of ordinary perception dissolves into a soft and receptive fog. The hard logic of the day extinguishes itself. The boundary between the real and the imagined becomes porous. Your conscious mind is not offline. It is present, but gentle, receptive, no longer armed with its characteristic skepticism and rejection. The guard is asleep. The parchment of your subconscious becomes soft, damp, and entirely open to new inscription. In this state, any image or feeling you bring to the territory with genuine conviction is received not as a claim to be evaluated and potentially rejected, but as an absolute truth to be accepted and executed. The impression is indelible. The subconscious accepts the suggestion without consulting the historical archive, without cross-referencing it against the established record of your past, without subjecting it to the scrutiny of the critical guard. It simply receives the new map as the current reality and begins the work of aligning your biology, your behavior, and the invisible orchestration of your external circumstances to match it. Why does darkness and stillness carry this specific power? Because darkness is the environment of gestation. Every genuine act of creation, the growth of a child in the womb, the germination of a seed beneath the earth, the crystallization of an idea in the silence of an undistracted mind, requires darkness, containment, and the absence of the scattered, dispersing energy of external stimulation. The harsh light of full wakefulness and the noise of external input disperse creative energy outward. Darkness and stillness contain and concentrate it, allowing the impression to form with the depth and permanence required for it to genuinely alter the subconscious map. To access this portal deliberately, not by accident or occasional fortunate chance, but as a reliable and repeatable practice, requires specific preparation. Your nervous system must be given clear signals that it is safe to lower its defenses. As long as the body carries any residual tension from the survival demands of the day, the critical guard will remain partially activated. The first step in approaching the portal is therefore the deliberate and systematic release of physical tension. The progressive relaxation of the body from the feet upward, with particular attention to the jaw and the forehead, which are the primary physiological anchors of the survival response. When these muscles release their grip, the nervous system registers at a deep level that the war of the day is over. It is safe to descend. As the body stills, the breath becomes the primary instrument. Not a complicated breathing technique, but the simple, sustained attention to the rhythm of air entering and leaving the body. This attention withdraws creative energy from the scattered, fragmented, anxiety-generating thoughts of the conscious mind and concentrates it on the immediate present, the only place where the portal is accessible. The mind, starved of the emotional fuel that sustained its noise, grows quieter. The thoughts that arise become slower, less urgent, more easily released. The descent continues. The confirmation that you have arrived at the theta portal comes through unmistakable physical and perceptual signals. A deep heaviness settles into the limbs, the body feeling weighted, still, almost immovable. Thoughts lose their logical coherence and begin appearing as fragments of imagery, vivid but non-sequential, rising from the subconscious rather than from the analytical mind. The boundary between your physical body and the surrounding environment softens and dissolves, and most reliably, a quality of absolute neutrality descends, a deep peace in which the urgencies of the day feel genuinely remote and without power. In this state, you have entered the portal. The guard is sleeping. The parchment is ready, and whatever map you choose to inscribe in this moment will be received with a depth and permanence that no amount of daytime repetition can produce. There is a dimension to the portal that deserves full attention, the quality of what you carry into it. You cannot imprint a clear map on contaminated parchment. The residue of the day, accumulated stress, unresolved reactions, the low-grade vibration of worry, acts as interference that reduces the depth of any new impression. Before the portal, release what the day has handed you, not through elaborate ritual, but through the simple, conscious decision to withdraw your attention from whatever still carries emotional charge and transfer that attention to the feeling of the map you are about to inscribe. The parchment clears. The territory opens. What happens on the other side of the portal matters equally. Many people use the drowsy state effectively and then undermine their own work the moment they rise. They emerge from the portal with a genuine impression of the new map, but within the first hour expose themselves to news, to others' fears, to the digital environment engineered to activate the survival response, and allow these inputs to overwrite the fresh ink with the old language of chaos and scarcity. The mornings that follow your creative portal practice require the same intentionality as the practice itself. The first hour of waking is a continuation of the theta state's receptivity, not as deep, but still far more open than the hardened beta of full daily wakefulness. What you feed your system in this hour sets the vibrational tone for everything that follows. A morning spent in deliberate cultivation of the feeling of your new map, even briefly, even imperfectly, reinforces the impression made during the night and establishes a frequency that the territory can carry forward into the unfolding of the day. The law of the seed and the soil completes this understanding. Faith in the precise, functional sense of unwavering certainty rather than desperate hope, is not a moral virtue you either possess or lack. It is the GPS of the creative process. It is the signal that tells the territory the seed has been planted. The watering is consistent. There are no contradictory commands withdrawing the commission. Mobilize fully. The territory, like perfect soil, does not judge the worthiness of the seed or the history of the gardener. It gestates and grows whatever is planted in it with genuine, sustained, coherent vibrational conviction. The challenge is the gap, the temporal space between planting the seed and the first visible evidence of harvest. This is where faith is tested and where most people abandon their new map. They inscribe it in the portal with real feeling and real conviction. Then they open their eyes the next morning or week or month, and the external landscape has not yet changed. The bank account reads the same number. The body presents the same symptoms, and the untrained mind, confronted with this persistent evidence of the old reality, concludes that the new map must be false. This is the moment of greatest danger. It is not a failure of the territory. The territory is gestating the seed with complete faithfulness. The harvest is coming, invisibly, at a level of reorganization not yet visible to the ordinary senses. But the cartographer, consulting only visible evidence, digs up the seed to check whether it is growing, and in the act of digging, destroys the process it was impatient to see completed. Faith is the willingness to leave the seed in the ground, to walk through the current landscape, nothing more than the delayed reflection of past planting, with calm, settled knowledge that the harvest is not a possibility, but a mathematical inevitability. If the cause is consistent, if the feeling of the new reality is maintained with genuine conviction, the effect must follow. This is not hope. This is mechanics. The soil of your subconscious is perfect. It requires only the right seed, planted with genuine feeling, watered with the emotion of fulfillment already received, and left undisturbed long enough for the extraordinary intelligence of the 95% to complete what it has already begun. This is the most dangerous point of the entire journey. Not because the territory has become hostile, and not because the principles you have been learning are suddenly less true or less applicable. It is dangerous because this is the precise location where 99% of people stop. It is the acid test, the crucible, that separates those who will genuinely transform their experience from those who will return once again to the familiar island of their 5%, carrying with them the knowledge of the continent, but unwilling, in the critical moment, to act from it. What makes this moment so difficult is that it arrives not during the quiet practice of the drowsy state, not during a moment of peaceful reflection, but in the full noise and friction of daily life. It arrives when the bill is real and the account is empty, when the diagnosis arrives and the words are clinical and final sounding, when the relationship fractures in a way that logic insists cannot be repaired, when every visible piece of evidence in your external landscape is pointing in the exact opposite direction from the map you have been working to inscribe. In that moment, the body reacts. The survival circuitry activates. The chest constricts. The jaw tightens. The thinking narrows to the dimensions of the immediate threat. And the reflex, the automatic, deeply conditioned reflex of a lifetime is to emotionally react, to feel the fear fully, and to express it, to collapse into the contraction, to hand the rudder of your creative energy entirely over to the emergency that the senses are reporting. This reaction feels inevitable. It feels like the only honest response to what is actually happening. And it is, in the mechanics of creation, the single act that most reliably guarantees the failure of everything you have worked to build. Reaction is an act of loyalty to the past, when you emotionally respond to the visible evidence of your old reality, when you allow the fear, the panic, the contracted chemistry of emergency to run through your system as a response to what your senses are reporting. You are doing something far more consequential than simply feeling bad in a difficult moment. You are issuing a command to the territory. You are declaring, with all the authority of genuine felt emotion in the native language, the 95% understands perfectly. The old script is true. The new map was a lie. Cancel the construction. Revert to the inherited programming. The territory, in its perfect and impartial loyalty, obeys. And this is why the act of non-reaction, the deliberate, practiced, disciplined refusal to allow external events to determine your internal state, is not a passive quality or a spiritual nicety. It is the supreme act of creative will. It is the firmest, most courageous, and most radical declaration you can make to your own consciousness. The past is finished. What my senses are currently showing me is an echo, a delayed reflection of the seeds planted in the past, not a statement about the permanence of my future. My only truth is what I have decreed in the silence of my own being, and I will not surrender that truth to the noise of a landscape that is, by definition, already obsolete. To sustain non-reaction when your entire body is producing the biochemistry of emergency requires a specific internal instrument, not more willpower applied in the same direction. That is the frantic rower's approach, and it exhausts itself against the current. It requires a compass, specifically a compass of certainty installed within you so deeply and so reliably that its needle holds its position regardless of how violently the ship moves around it. A compass, by design, is not affected by the turbulence of the vessel it is mounted on. Its needle does not shift because the ship lists or turns or encounters rough water. It responds to one thing only: the magnetic field of the earth, the fixed, invisible, permanent reality that underlies all surface disturbance. Your compass of certainty works by precisely the same principle. The fixed field it responds to is not a hopeful belief or an optimistic disposition. It is the cold, scientific, unwavering conviction that the law of cause and effect is mechanically perfect. That if the cause, your sustained vibrational state, remains constant, the effect, the physical manifestation, is not a possibility awaiting approval, but a mathematical inevitability already in motion. The navigator who holds this conviction does not need the storm to subside before they trust their compass. They trust the compass because they understand the mechanics of navigation, not because the weather has become cooperative. Certainty is not optimism. Optimism says, things will probably work out well. Certainty says, given this specific cause operating through this specific mechanism, this specific effect is inevitable. The difference between the two is the difference between hoping a planted seed will grow and knowing from the mechanics of biology and the nature of soil that the seed will grow unless actively prevented from doing so. The navigator does not hope for the destination. They know that if the heading is maintained and the fuel is sustained, the destination will be reached. The only variable is time. When the external landscape attempts to deflect your needle, when your eyes report the empty account, when your ears deliver the unwelcome diagnosis, when your senses insist that the storm is real and your new map is fantasy, the practice of non-reaction is the practice of closing your inner eye to the authority of the visible, not denying that the storm exists, acknowledging it with the calm neutrality of a diagnostician. Yes, this symptom is present. This is the visible reflection of seeds planted in the past. It has no authority over the cause I am currently sustaining. My map is already inscribed. The territory is already at work. The harvest is already in motion. By refusing to panic, you are communicating to the universe in the only language it has ever understood: vibration. I see what my senses are showing me. I acknowledge the appearance of difficulty, but this difficulty does not move me from my heading. My destination is certain. My cause is consistent. The effect must follow me, because I am the cartographer and the map has been drawn. To understand how to apply this in the most demanding practical moments, it helps to recognize the specific mechanics of what occurs when a triggering event strikes. Your emotional body, your rudder, is sensitive, receptive, and powerfully responsive to environmental input. It feels the force of the incoming wave, and its natural tendency is to turn toward the threat, to contract, to prepare for defense. This is not a flaw. It is the body's ancient and well-designed protective mechanism. The question is not whether the rudder will feel the wave. It will always feel the wave. The question is whether your conscious will, your propeller, will allow the wave to determine the final heading of the ship. Non-reaction is not passivity. It is not the suppression of feeling or the performance of forced calm over a foundation of suppressed terror. It is the most intense activation of conscious will available to you. It is the moment when your 5% grabs the rudder firmly and says, "Feel what you need to feel. The emotion is real, and I will not deny it." But we are not changing course. The heading remains fixed. The north is unchanged. It is the union of the willingness to feel fully and the refusal to be directed by what is felt. The integration of the emotional body's sensitivity with the conscious mind's capacity for deliberate direction. When a wave hits and the emergency response activates, there is a practical protocol for intercepting the automatic program before it completes its takeover. The first movement is the sovereign pause. Panic demands speed. Automatic reaction is by nature instantaneous and thoughtless. It closes the gap between stimulus and response so completely that there appears to be no gap at all. Your first act of power, in the first fraction of a second, is to insert a pause into that gap. Stop. Do not send the message. Do not make the decision. Do not speak the words already forming. Take a single, deep, slow, audible breath. And as the exhale completes, issue one internal command: pause. This microsecond of deliberate stillness is the space you reclaim from the programming. It breaks the automatic circuit between the triggering event and the reactive response. The rudder is back in your hand. The second movement is the cold diagnosis. Having paused, do not fight the feeling that is present. Attempting to suppress or deny it only increases its energetic charge and makes it more, not less, likely to override your direction. Instead, observe it with the detachment of a scientist examining data. Name it precisely and accurately, not, "I am terrified because I am about to lose everything," but "I am experiencing the biochemistry of inherited fear activating in response to a familiar pattern." Not, "This person is attacking me," but "I am observing an ego defense reaction to perceived criticism." Not, "This is a disaster," but "I am feeling the contraction that accompanies significant change." By relabeling the experience in precise, non-catastrophic terms, you dissociate from it. You are no longer the storm. You are the navigator observing the storm from the bridge, with the full awareness that the bridge is not the sea and the observer is not the weather. The third movement is the anchor injection. The energy that has been stopped must be redirected. If it is simply blocked without being given a new direction, it will find a way around the blockage. Take the stopped energy and convert it into an anchor. Choose a single word, a brief phrase, or a short internal statement that represents the truth of your new map. Certainty, peace. The harvest is already here. It is done. Repeat it internally, synchronized with the breath, with the focused repetition of someone driving a stake into the ground. You are not ignoring the problem. You are raising your internal frequency above the level at which the problem was created by the only means available to you, the deliberate, practiced, sustained injection of a coherent counter frequency. Certainty, the deep, stable, self-replenishing conviction that your map is real and your harvest is coming, is not established in a single dramatic moment of decision. It is a state reached through saturation. Think of a glass filled with turbid water, the old fears, the inherited doubts, the conditioning of decades. The method of effort tries to scoop the turbid water out one spoonful at a time. You never finish. The method of certainty places the glass beneath a flowing source of pure water and allows the clean current to continuously displace the turbid. At first, the water remains murky, but as the clean flow is maintained through daily practice, through the imprinting ritual, through the consistent discipline of non-reaction, the turbid water gradually overflows and leaves. With time, and with the constancy that is the only force capable of producing genuine change at the level of the subconscious, the only thing remaining in the glass is clarity. The final proof that certainty has genuinely taken root, the indicator that the compass is fully calibrated and reliably fixed, is detachment, not indifference, which is a suppression of caring, but the specific quality of completion, the absence of emotional need for the result to arrive on a particular timeline, in a particular form, through a particular mechanism. The navigator who is truly certain of their destination does not grip the wheel in white-knuckled anxiety every time the ship rolls. They hold the heading with confidence and allow the voyage to proceed at its own pace, through its own sequence of events. without the anxious need to control each wave the ship encounters. And paradoxically, as every genuine practitioner of these principles eventually discovers, it is precisely in this state of completed certainty and genuine detachment that manifestation accelerates most dramatically, because in that state, the last remaining obstacle has been removed, the fear of not having it, and the territory receiving a unified command without any residual countervailing frequency of lack or anxiety is free to operate at its full and extraordinary capacity. The imprinting ritual itself, the practice of inscribing the new map in the theta portal, requires one final layer of understanding before it can be applied with full effectiveness. The act of imprinting is not a performance. It is not a visualization exercise executed with effortful concentration, with gritted teeth focus on producing the most vivid possible imagery. The territory does not respond to the quality of the picture. It responds to the quality of the feeling. The image is only the framework, the scaffolding around which the felt experience is constructed. What the territory receives and accepts as a genuine, binding command is the emotional state itself, the specific biochemistry of living inside the fulfilled desire, not the intellectual clarity of imagining it from the outside. The practical protocol begins before the drowsy state is entered. The cartographer distills the full complexity of their desire into its vibrational essence, not the object itself, but the specific emotion its fulfillment would generate: freedom, relief, wholeness, security, the deep, settled sense of genuine completion. This feeling is the North Star, the destination the territory actually recognizes. Everything else is just the address. From that feeling, the cartographer constructs a scene, not a long movie, not an elaborate narrative requiring sustained concentration, but a brief 5-second sensory loop that implies the desire as already fulfilled. The scene must engage multiple senses: what you would see, what you would feel physically in your body, perhaps what you would hear or smell or touch. And crucially, it must be oriented from the inside of the experience rather than observed from the outside. You are not watching yourself succeed. You are inhabiting the success, living it from within, feeling it as the present tense reality of your actual experience in this moment. This scene, this memory of the future, as it has sometimes been called, is what you carry into the portal. As the body descends through relaxation into the threshold state, as the guard grows heavy with sleep and the parchment of the subconscious softens into full receptivity, you project this scene in a continuous, unhurried loop, not forcing it, not concentrating with effortful intensity, simply inhabiting it, again and again, allowing the feeling to deepen with each repetition, allowing the sense of completion and fulfillment to saturate your system until the distinction between the imagined and the real becomes, in the softened awareness of the theta state, genuinely impossible to maintain. And then, ideally, if the practice has been deep enough and the surrender genuine enough, you allow sleep to take you while still inside that feeling. Sleep is maximum receptivity, the last instruction your subconscious receives before the deepest processing of the night is the feeling of your fulfilled desire. And the territory, which does not distinguish between the reality of waking experience and the reality of deeply felt inner experience, accepts that feeling as the current truth and begins the work of aligning everything within and around you to match it. Now comes the final act. The map has been drawn. The seed has been planted in the theta portal with genuine feeling and real conviction. The days of non-reaction have been practiced with increasing skill. The compass of certainty has been calibrated through the consistent practice of saturation. And then, gradually, and sometimes suddenly, the harvest begins to appear. The external landscape starts in small ways at first, and then in larger ones to reflect the new internal map. The opportunity materializes. The health begins to shift. The relationship aligns. The resources arrive through channels that logic could never have predicted or arranged. This is the moment most people do not prepare for. They have prepared for the work of planting, for the discipline of waiting, for the practice of faith through the uncertain gap. They have not prepared for the specific challenge of receiving. Throughout all of this, the portal practice, the non-reaction discipline, the saturation of certainty, the waking hours of the day require their own form of active stewardship. The new map that you inscribe each night is extraordinarily powerful in its impression. But during the day, with the critical guard fully restored and the external world broadcasting its persistent signal of the old reality, that impression is vulnerable. The wet ink of the new map can be overwritten by the sustained frequencies of the environment if the cartographer allows those frequencies to enter without a filter. The sources of contamination are external and internal. Externally, the world is not a neutral environment. Social conversations weighted toward complaint. Digital environments designed to activate the survival response. News cycles optimized for fear. All of these, absorbed without filtering, actively retune your internal state to the frequencies they carry. The territory, responding faithfully to whatever frequency is most sustained, adjusts its output accordingly. The internal source is more subtle. The inherited identity does not dissolve quietly. The old self, defined by struggle and the familiar story of not enough, reasserts itself through complaint, self-criticism, and the habitual return to worry as a form of control. Every word, spoken aloud or only internally, that originates from this old identity is a directive to the territory. And every directive issued from the frequency of the old map delays the arrival of the new one. Guarding the map during the day is not optional. It is the completion of the creative cycle that the portal practice begins. The conscious monitoring of input, the disciplined interruption of complaint, and the repeated return to the feeling of the North Star whenever the internal state drifts back toward old frequencies. Not with self-judgment, which is itself a contracted frequency, but with the simple, practiced act of recognizing the drift, releasing it without ceremony, and returning to the chosen destination as the dominant climate of the day. Your life is not managed from the outside in. It is created from the inside out. Everything that will ever appear in your external experience, your health, your resources, your relationships, your opportunities, the quality and texture of your daily existence originates as a vibrational state within the territory of your subconscious mind. The cartographer who understands this has access to a form of creative authority that no external circumstance can permanently diminish. Not because the circumstances become easy or because the storms stop coming, but because the navigator knows with the unshakable certainty of someone who has learned the mechanics of the territory, that they are not subject to the storms. They are the source of the weather, and what has been created through unconscious, inherited programming can be recreated deliberately, skillfully, and with the full power of a consciousness that has finally learned its own language. This is not a promise of guaranteed outcomes on a predetermined timeline. It is something more reliable than that. It is the recognition of a principle so consistent, so mechanically precise, and so completely available to every human being who chooses to learn and apply it, that its results, when the principles are genuinely understood and consistently practiced, tend to move in directions that the conscious mind, from its position on the small island, could never have imagined or predicted. Your task is not to know what is coming. Your task is to hold the heading, to sustain the cause, to trust the soil, and to allow the extraordinary intelligence of the 95%, the continent that has been waiting your entire life for you to claim it, to do what it has always been designed to do. The journey that began with the recognition of your true size, the understanding that the island of your conscious mind is not the totality of your being, ends here, in the declaration of the full territory as your own, not a territory to be visited occasionally in moments of inspiration, not a continent glimpsed briefly during meditation, and then forgotten in the noise of daily life, but the permanent, inhabited, actively governed landscape of a consciousness that has finally come home to itself. You are the cartographer. You are the territory. You are the map and the land and the intelligence that draws the new reality into being with every sustained feeling, every deliberate image, and every act of courageous non-reaction to the echoes of a past that no longer defines you. The continent is yours. It has always been yours. Go claim it. If this audiobook has shifted something real in the way you understand your own mind and your own creative power, we invite you to make that shift known. Subscribe to Elite Success Audiobooks and continue the journey into the full depth of your own consciousness. Share this with someone who is still living on the small island, still exhausted from fighting a river they were never meant to fight. And leave a comment below. Leave the number 999 if this has landed as something more than information, if it has arrived as recognition, because recognition is where transformation actually begins.